Hello and welcome to the Salty Sarge Podcast. You can find us on Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you subscribe to your podcast. I am Hunter, and I am joined today by the namesake himself, the Salty Sarge.
Welcome,
Sarge,
welcome.
How are you today?
I'm fantastic.
Well, what this is our first episode. What did you want to kind of lead off into here?
It all started basically where Hunter came in and was like, "Hey, I hear these stories you're talking about. This could be fun. We should have fun with this." So I want to clarify, this is not a political. I am a police officer of a metropolitan area within Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go into detail there for now, but these are just stories that I've encountered, and future episodes will include other officers or veterans that experience things that I haven't experienced or seen. So we'll just start off by, I've been a police officer for almost 18 years. Before that, my dad was a police officer, and it was kind of ingrained in me as a kid. I looked at my dad as a policeman as kind of like a hero. I never really saw any of the bad stuff. I just saw my dad put on his uniform, and I thought, man, I just want to do that so bad. So as a kid, I always played, cops and robbers with cousins and family, and run around the neighborhood. And my dad gave me this old CB, and I mounted it to my bicycle, and he gave me his police hat. So I would sit in the neighborhood, run radar, pretend radar on cars and stuff. And that was when I was 6-7 years old. So I've always wanted to do it. When I started off, even when I graduated high school, and those little things that they put in the paper, whenever you went to Bush Creek, they talked about, what do you want to do? And I specifically put, I wanted to be a police officer in the metro. That's what I wanted to do my whole life. And everybody that's talked to me is like, that's what, you need to do. And you're geared for that. So I had a couple of jobs before I became one. I thought 21, you could be one at 21. And I thought, man, that's a little too young. I was 21 and I didn't know anything. So I joined the military. But in the military, I thought, hey, I joined the Air National Guard. And I thought, hey, I want to be they wanted me to be some kind of road paver dude or something. I'm like, I don't want to do that. And it was like the civil engineering unit. And I said, no, I want to be an MP like those guys. And boy, that was a big mistake. I did that for almost 10 years, but I made a lot of good friends along the way. And it kind of led into my police career, because I joined the police department in 2007 and started the academy. And what people need to understand about the police academy is, I have a military background. A lot of people in the academy, they don't have a military background. Mm-hmm. We're talking about civilians that probably went to college. One guy worked at Lowe's. There was a girl there that was a 7-Eleven clerk, and she thought, hey, I'll be on it. And there's an IHOP waitress. Just a variety of people that was thrown in the mix that were all hired. At that time, there was, I think, 5,000 applicants for that academy, and they took, I think, 40 or 50 of us.
Oh, wow.
So, that we were considered the cream of the crop of the groups and I went to what's called an all-call. Mm-hmm. So they basically the police department come up with an idea. They said, hey, you could come on a weekend, anybody could try out. I'm talking anybody, right? Uh-huh. I had prepared for this. So there's like a PT test you take. And I remember this guy shows up, and he's wearing blue jeans with his son. He's like 50 years old, and his son's like 20. And he's like, hey, man, what are y'all doing here? Oh, we're here to do this physical fitness thing. And they try out and in jeans. But anyway, as long as you pass that test, I didn't have to go into initial testing. Mm-hmm. It was a free day. It was a new thing they were doing. And I'll never forget, this other dude showed up. And he goes, why are they taking our IDs? It's like, dude, they're checking you for warrants, bud. Like, they're checking your name. And that dude bolted. He got his car and left. He's like, I'm out. So when he left, we all laughed. We're like, oh my gosh. And they saw his, and they pop out. They go, hey, did y'all see Billy? Where's Billy at? And Billy's already gone. And Billy's got a bunch of warrants. And he also talked about he just smoked a bunch of weed before he showed up. I'm like, oh, dude, you're trying to be a police officer, man. Like, come on.
What were you thinking?
Yeah. And at that time, weed was still, pretty much illegal. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so I'm dating myself. So I made it through the academy. And then once you go through the academy, you do shooting, you do driving. They teach you how to do combatos and stuff. And we did the old school stuff. Things have changed now since I've done it, because we've had some issues where recruits have gotten hurt severely and things, because it's a hard program. And if you've never been in a fight before, they're going to put you in a fight. They called it the 7-minute fight, and you fought a lot of instructors for 7 minutes straight. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not an MMA fighter by all means, but you were at the point where you were exhausted. I mean, you were done. And they wanted you to get to that level for you to understand the survival of it, because you are in a position to where you could have to go into battle. And, and there was some recruits there that didn't understand that they didn't get the fact that we're going to fight. Like, I'll never forget the 7-Eleven clerk. She's like, this is so stressful. And I'm like, you understand that we're going to have a gun and a badge, and we're actually going to go out there and arrest people. And she's like, you think we're really going to do that? We're just like, yeah. So anyway, sidebar we'll put her in a pocket somewhere down the road, and we'll see how she turned out. But so anyway, graduate the academy around Christmas time, and I hit the streets running, and I was ready to get out there. I couldn't stand the academy. I didn't like being stuck in a room and training. I was ready to go, because I was like, man, this is so dumb. And I struggled a little bit with things in the academy. I didn't do as well as what I wanted to do. But as far as being a police officer, I think I excelled better just doing the job. So when you go through our academy, once you're done, you go through what's called the field training program. It's called the FTO program. So you're assigned to an officer, and you ride with him, and basically you do the job, and he grades you. He basically evaluates you and makes sure that you can do the job. So the very first time I get to the station, it was the Southwest side. It's called Will Rogers Division is where I was. And the very first day I'll never forget, because I had an old Crown Vic, and in the Crown Vics, the back seat comes out, right? So you always were told to search your back seat prior to your shift. That's what we teach you people, because what if you forget something of a bad guy or someone leaves something in your car? So I go out and I check my car. There ain't no seat. I'm like, and I'm in full panic mode, because 10 minutes before that, there was a seat there. Okay, I'm like, there's a seat, and I'm thinking, this seat didn't grow legs. So I'm nervous wreck. And right before that, right after you we called it get the car ready. So at that time, you would check your back seat, put all your stuff in it, make sure it's squared away, ready to go. And you would go into what's called lineup. And in lineup, the lieutenants, our supervisors are called lieutenants. And so at the time I was riding with an officer, he had no rank yet. And you would go and line up, and you sit the very front row where the rookies sit. And they would ask you questions, what are you here for? Who are you? And stuff like that. And then they would say, hey, go out to your cars and get ready to go to work. So I'm in full panic mode, because I'm like, there was a seat there. It's not there anymore. Where'd it go? So I go running back inside, and you play that dumb teenager thing where you're like, what's going on? This didn't really happen. I don't know what's going on. Maybe my tail's messing with me. So I go sit down inside. He's like, hey, is everything good to go? Did you check the back seat? I'm just like, what do I say? Full panic mode. Like, what do I say here? You're grading me. It's my first day. I go, yeah, I checked the back seat. That's all I said. And he was in on it too, evidently. So I come back outside, and I'm still looking for this back seat. And he finally comes outside, and he says, what is wrong with you? And I said, dude, our back seat is gone. And as we're leaving, as I'm looking up, there's a pickup truck, an unmarked pickup truck with some narcotics guys in it, and they have the back seat in their hands, and they're leaving with it. They're like, bye, Ricky. And I was like, that's first day. Okay, let the games begin.
There you go.
So I went and found my back seat in the park across the street. It was Will Rogers Park in the middle of the parking lot. Put it back in the car. My FTO laughed, said, all right, let's go to work. So they invited us they were doing, that particular team at the time was called Impact. And they were doing a warrant on a house. So they're like, they always take rookies along because there's two of us in a car, and usually we're not tied up for anything. So they said, hey, come with us on this warrant. So, I'm all pumped. I'm just like, oh my God, it's like my first big deal warrant. I'm like, gosh, we're going to hit a house. And later on, I was one of those guys, and it's really not that big of a deal. I mean, it's fun, but as a brand new officer, though, I was 20-something years old. Right. It was like a crusade for me. I was like ready to go. I was pumped. So we get to this house, and they say anybody on the outside is fair game. That's the person you need to get, and you get them in custody. I'm like, okay. So we get to this house, and my FTO's like, there's a guy right there, and I don't know if this guy was involved or not, but he was there. So they hit the house, and I go running up to this guy, and he's just some homeless guy that's walking down the sidewalk, okay? And so I run up to him, I grab him, and he goes, man, what are you messing with me for? And so I take him down, do the Ricky thing. And of course, the FTO's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, slow down, don't hurt him. And this guy was older, and I didn't know, and he was drunk. And I'd pick him up, and they're like, good job, Ricky. Like, he has nothing to do with the house, but you know what? You can deal with him. So I remember taking him to the county jail, and it was different than it is now. So I walked in, and this was my first ever arrest I've ever done. And the poor guy just happened to be walking down the street, and we just kind of basically like make a public drunk arrest, kidnapping on it, basically.
Jeez.
So, it's one of those, you got to learn how to do an arrest. So I grab him, and he is pissed off at me. He's talking so much trash, but you dumb rookie, And I'm just like floating like, I don't care. Now I got to figure out how to get to the freaking jail because I don't know. We didn't have maps like we do now. So I'm like, where's the jail at? It's downtown. So I'm trying to figure that out. So as a rookie, you don't think about stuff like that. You think about, like, okay, it's literally baby steps. Like, okay, I got to do this now. I got to do this now. So we take him downtown. Well, one thing I noticed about him is when you get him in the jail, you take the handcuffs off of him, and he's standing there, and his eye just looked weird. And I kept thinking, like, I didn't want to say anything, but it stuck out like a sore thumb, dude. Like, you could kind of see, you look at someone's eye and you see eyeball, but then you could see like the pink and stuff in his eye. I was like his eyelid or something.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, so I just asked him, like, dude, what is up with your eye? As he's telling me his whole life story. And he goes, you dumb rookie. He goes, I got a glass eye. And at that point, he takes it out of his head, and it's got like some gook on it, and he throws it at me. And it hits my uniform and bounces off the ground. And he's going, he's laughing, get that drunk laugh. And he's got no eye. And he's walking around like, look at me, I'm a pirate, and he had this glass eye. And that was the very first arrest I ever did at that point. And I'll never forget that because it was a true eye opener for me. No pun intended there. But it was like, wow, these are the kind of people we'll be dealing with.
And that was day one?
That was day one.
Day one.
Well, that was only a couple hours into day one. And then it went into, as I'm cruising along, I say, hey, we're going to go this fatality accident with this motorcycle. And that was a whole nother deal. And then it just went to like this call. These guys were fighting over these boots. And I said, hey, we want these boots, and they're brown. And the guy's like, sir, let me stop you right there. They're almond. I was like, my bad, Clancy. Like, okay, and I mean, he just kept going into these friggin' boots like they're just almond, and my FTO is like almond. So that was kind of like the thought of the day was almond.
Almond.
And so I progressed through the program. At that time, I worked 2 shift, and then I went from 2 shift to day shift, and I moved over to Spring Lake area.
2 shift being the evening shift.
Yeah, like
up
4
to like
4 to 2.
Midnight 2.
And then the day shift was like 7 to 5. So day shift is more like wrecks, traffic, traffic stuff. There was a lot of shoplifting calls, like at Penn Square Mall. Like I would go up there daily just arresting people for shoplifting. And a lot of odd individuals, though, like a rich teacher one time, like she was in Dillard's and stole like $2,000 of stuff. The husband shows up and he's like, I don't understand. Like, we hate money. Like, why she's like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I have a problem.
Thrill.
Yeah,
it's the thrill of it.
It was, and that's I didn't know though. I mean, because I was always taught you don't steal, So I mean, you have it, and at that time as a rookie, I didn't develop those like personable traits with people. I just was like, you're bad, I'm good, you're going to jail. You know what I mean? There was no ifs, ands, or buts. I don't care about your life story. I'm taking you to jail. You committed a crime. You're done. You're bond paper. Like Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
I am the law, and you go to jail.
So over the years, has that perspective changed?
That has changed a lot.
A lot.
So quite a bit. But that has changed tremendously. I've become more humanized, if you will. But, I mean, it's just I was a young kid, and I didn't know any different. And two, I realized then that my dad really didn't show me the craziness of what he dealt with and what he saw.
You saw the heroics of it.
I saw like kids hugging my dad and like, the picture of the Norman Rockwell, of the police officer in the diner, which I have in the Salty Sarge that I absolutely love. I actually bought it. I had it framed whenever I got on the police department. I've kept it for a long time because I look at that and think, that's what a true police officer is just giving advice to a little boy that ran away, and he's trying to tell him to go back home. But that's how I viewed my father, and that's how I viewed law enforcement. But it's nothing like that on the street, ever. Hardly ever. You get situations where you deal with that, but it's really, I'm really
you have those moments.
Yeah, and they're
far and few between, though.
Yeah, most of the time you're seeing everybody's what they feel like is their bad day, and that's just the way it is. But as I progressed through the FTO program, I moved pretty quickly, and I was in the military at the same time, so I was deploying. Also, as a soldier, I was getting ready to deploy. I didn't have to end up deploying. Actually, I got to finish the program, and they put me in the northeast side of Oklahoma City, which is called Spring Lake Division. Now, just a sidebar on that. Okay, the demographics of the Spring Lake side is probably black. It's actually the NAACP has come out because I testified in this court, and they told me this in court. It's 98% black. So all the street cops over there were white. And a lot of us were from like small towns, like country guys. Okay,
really missing the
yeah. I mean, I came from Birch Creek, America, dude. We had one black kid in my school. It was a big culture shock for me going into that environment because I would take calls that I wouldn't understand why this went on, or I'll never forget like instances. You know what a state ID is?
Yeah.
So back in the day, they were red. Right. And I grew up like you had a driver's license. That was your ID. So I get this deal where there's a state driver's license, an ID. And I'm like, what is this? When I'm in the FTO program and they're like, that's an ID, dude. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like they don't have a driver's license? He goes, yeah, that's what that means. They don't have a driver's license. I was like, oh. And they're like, you never seen that before? I'm like, no, dude.
No.
Like I've never seen that. And let's go back. When I was in the FTO program, the one good funny thing is I looked really young for my age. I don't look like I look now. I put on a lot more weight since then. I was a trimmed out, young looking guy. And I make a traffic stop on this old lady, and my mom got me this real nice pin. It's called a cross pin. Now, my mom's going to hear this, and she's probably going to get mad at me because she still thinks I have the pin. I do not. So, on this traffic stop, she had this just raggedy-ass car, right? Just a piece of junk. And that was before Obama's Clunkers exchange. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Jennifer Clunkers, whatever.
Or the lemon.
Yeah, where you change them in and you get like a big rebate.
Yeah.
So he was getting cash for Clunkers. That's what it was. You get $5,000 for a Clunker. So anyway, so she was driving this and I'd stop her for something. I don't remember what I did. And I get up there and it's like my first official traffic stop, if you think about it. So I'm talking to her and she's like, she just kept cutting me off like, you are impersonating a police officer. You are too young to be a policeman. Like, you look like some kid. Like, where'd you get that uniform at? And I'm sitting there like, man, my FTO is laughing. He is a bit over laughing. He's like, keep going. And I was like, I don't know what to do here. Like, the lady doesn't believe I'm a cop. So I have my pen and I'm nervous wreck. We at the time there were actually hard copy tickets. And so I have this real nice pen my mom got me and I was so proud of it. I should have just kept it in a box. So I've got it and I let her sign with it. And they told me, don't let them sign with your pen. You fill it out with your nice pen and you take a crappy pen and you put it on your thing because you don't know what these people have touched. You know what I mean? So I didn't think about that. I learned my lesson that day though.
Oh no.
Because I dropped the pen and it goes down in her door. You know how the gap between the window and the metal? It goes down in the door. It's gone. And I'm trying to find it with a flashlight. I'm like, where's my pen go? She goes, I don't care. Give him my ticket and get the hell away from me. And I was like, but my pen. And then I just was like, whoa, my pen's gone. So I go back to my car and the FTO was like, he's laughing. He goes, oh man, you did a great job on your first traffic stop. I was like, that was a nightmare. I don't want to ever do that again. And he goes, that's what you do, bro, is you sign tickets. I was like, I don't want to ever mess with that again. So we left, and as we're cruising away, at that moment, a call comes over the radio and says, at that time I was Adam 58, I believe. Yeah. Crazy, I remember that.
Adam 58 is meaning what?
No, that's like my unit number. That's what they call me. So I'm like, yeah, go ahead, headquarters. She goes, hey, were you on a traffic stop? I said, yeah. And she goes, are you sure? I'm like, yeah. And she said, well, because this lady's calling in saying there's an impersonator driving around in a police car stopping people. Is it some teenager?
She reported.
Like, no, of course, it was me. So from that point on, it was always the joke of, you're the young-looking guy, whatever.
Doogie Howser.
So, the Doogie Howser. And then, at that same traffic stop, I left my lights on, and I couldn't hear them. And it was daytime because, at 4 o'clock, it's still daylight out.
Yeah, you can't see the light.
I'm driving around, all these cars are stopping. They're like looking at me, they're pulled over. I'm like, what are these people doing? And my nephew was laughing. I'm like, what are you doing? They pull it, get out of my way. And they're all pulling over. And he goes, your lights are on. I was like, I turn them off. And I'm just like, because now the lights in the cars, they beep. You know, make a BB sign. It'll tell you, hey, your lights are on. So, because during the day you can't see them, but at night, they light up like a Christmas tree now. But I had the old bubble top lights. This is an old Crown Vic, and it didn't have a hole in the floor yet. My dad's Crown Vic, the older models always had the muffler or what's connected to the muffler? The exhaust would melt the floor. And it would cause a hole in the floor. And so a lot of these scout cars, and we call them scout cars because back in the day, Oklahoma City called them Scout Patrol, or U Patrol. So that's what we call. That's what I grew up with calling them. But a lot of guys call them patrol cars, and I call them scout cars. But they had holes in them and the older models did. So you could see the floor as you're driving along. You could see and then the smokers loved it because they could, pop their cigarette out the bottom, or the dippers liked it too because they could spit straight through. Yeah. But I remember my dad's police car because it had a bench seat in it. So and I'd clean it for him when I was a kid, and you could slide through the front seat, across one side or the other. And then the cars I had, they had what's called the MDT. We called them a mobile data system or something. And it was a little box, and it would like beep and stuff. And it was not really a computer. It was a older system that you didn't get to see your calls, or you couldn't use the GPS or anything like that. So like you can now. But anyway, so I got to be a part of that era, which I thought was kind of cool. I got to be a part of the old headquarters and that kind of stuff, and still driving old police cars. And so, as I moved through back to moving through the program, when I went to Spring Lake FTO, when I show up at that division, I noticed that all the cars, 90% of the cars had bullet holes in them. Thinking, what am I getting myself into? And then I end up here. So I end up on third shift over there, which is night shift. So that's primarily
like midnight.
Yeah, it's 9:30. So ours is 9:30 to 7. So we were 10-hour shifts, and I get over there and I don't know anybody. And a guy that ended up over there with me, I knew him in the academy, but we weren't academy buddies because he had kids, he had a family. I didn't have any kids. I just had B. We didn't have kids yet. So I was kind of a part of that group that the younger crowd, we go out and go party and stuff like that at bars and clubs at that time. And he didn't hang out with us. So he had his kids and stuff. So I really didn't really know him. I knew him, but I didn't know him. So he gets out of FTO and we kind of ride around together. And mind you, at that time, they hadn't had a rookie officer in like 7 years. So we were kind of outcasts. Nobody on that shift wanted to hang out with the rookie. They didn't want anything to do with the rookie. Because rookies don't make the best decisions, and we kind of escalate things a lot of times and things like that. So, because we're learning. I mean, that's how you get out there and do this job. Is you just have to learn it. You just when you're on your own, it's so much better because you kind of get to do your own pace, and you kind of learn real quick of kind of how to do things. But we had a good time starting out. I mean, it was rough. I didn't know what I was doing half the time. A lot. I called my supervisor a lot. He did not like rookies. So and then I know so when you're a police officer and you get out there, like in the corporate world or any other job, I'm sure they kind of maintain like your activity, like your performance in the job and your activity, like your daily stuff. Like I'm sure you, like where you work, you maintain a log of stuff that you have accomplished. Or
everything's got to be documented.
Yeah,
you got to keep track of everything.
Yeah, like a nurse charts.
Yeah.
So a police officer, we have what's called an activity sheet.
Yeah.
So you fill one of those out. Every call you take, you put your call, your address, and what you did, stuff like that. So when we first came out, the supervisor was like, "Hey, your activity is really low. Like, you need to be doing stuff. You need to be getting out there and stopping cars and doing stuff." And I was just like worried I was going to mess up. I was going to get in trouble. You know, at that time, I don't say trouble. I just didn't know what I was doing.
Didn't want to embarrass yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really have any guidance, you know, and the East Side, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know where I was. I mean, I didn't know streets. I didn't know addresses. I mean, I got sent to the Lower East Side. So, you know, when you're cruising through a city, anytime you come across like Martin Luther King or something, you know, you start thinking, okay, it's a different kind of area. And it is. The demographics change. So that's where I was. And I enjoyed it because anything on Martin Luther King usually turned into something. I mean, if you've ever been over there, you know, it's by the Capitol. You know, you have Lincoln. And at the time, there was only one on queue, and it was at 23rd and Lincoln. So we go there and kind of hang out for a break or whatever, and then we just take our calls from there. Because the police officers, when you see the shows, the TV shows and movies, like there's a big office, you know, and there's a lot of chaos. It's not like that. You go to line up, and they call them briefing stations. So any of these stations that are around, there's no cops in them. We go there to brief, and then we go in a car for 10 hours, and you're in your police car, and that's your office. So, you know, side note, when you come up to a cop and go, "Hey, man, why is your car running?" You know, well, that's my office. You know, I mean, you have an office you work in. Does the air on?
Shut your power off in your office?
Do you? No, you don't.
No.
You know, the air conditioner's on and the heat's on. Well, you know, I'm out there in the heat. I'm out there in the rain. I'm out there in the cold. So, no, my car doesn't shut off. And that's why. And two, I have a lot of electronics in there. Okay, I've got a lot of stuff in there going on. I got a computer that I do everything from, all my work from, you know, and that's how we do things. So that's why our cars are running all the time. Just a sidebar note, if anybody has questions about that or comments. But, you know, like, well, that's, like, you know, what about taxes? Well, you know, my dad told me a story one time. You know, he said, I pay your taxes, you know, I pay your salary. And he goes, you take a penny and you clip that penny, and that's what you paid me, you know? And that's what I tell people. I use that on the street. I'm like, you know how much you paid me today? You took that penny and you clipped it, because that's what you paid me. You know, that doesn't matter about how much you pay me to do this job, because there's not many guys that will be willing to run into a burning building or into gunfire, you know, like we did. So, and I saw lots of officers do that, a lot of brave individuals that did that constantly.
Yeah.
And, you know, my rookie years, I always tell recruits that the funnest time I had being a policeman was when I was in the FTO program in my first year on the street by myself, because I didn't know any better, and I wasn't reckless. I was always safe, but I had so much fun. I never really thought about, you know, I don't know how I say it. I never really thought about, like, well, there's no tomorrow. I mean, I never really, I honestly, I was invincible.
The consequences.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't, I mean, I wasn't like, hey, I may die today. I never thought like that.
Yeah.
I chased bad guys. I mean, one time, and I learned real quick that when you look at somebody when you're driving and you're in a police car, you forget sometimes at that age, you forget you're in a police car. And everybody's looking at you. They're like, why are these people staring at me? Like, what do you want? You know, and
you were going 10-0 over, and then you saw me and slowed down.
Yeah.
And like, what the
you're trying to get out of their way. I'm trying to get somewhere. Yeah. So one day I'm over in an area, it's called Liberty Station. I'll never forget it, because I was cruising along, and I get behind this car, and these guys, they pull out in front of me, and as they drive past me, they give that deer in the headlight look, and they're just staring at me, and I'm looking at them, and I'm like, what's up? And they pull around this back parking lot of this bank, or this big building, and I lose them, and I pull around, and they disappear. And I go, where are they at? And I pull around the side there, and the doors are open, and they're running. They're sprinting away, and I was like, oh my God, what do I do? Because I'm like, I don't know what to do here. Like,
I guess they were doing something wrong.
Headquarters, like, a guy just bailed out of a car, so I like run the tag. It's not stolen. The passenger's still in the car. And he bails like, I didn't do nothing wrong. I mean, it's not doing nothing wrong. And the other guy's running, so I was like, well, who do I chase? I don't know. Well, kind of find out. You don't chase the passenger because typically the passenger is innocent.
Yeah.
You don't have any charges on him. It's the guy driving the car.
Yeah.
So he kind of ran off, and all these other salty sergeants show up. And, I get on the radio. I'm stressed out like an idiot, and I'm just in distress. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And they show up and they're like, you dumb rookie. Like, really? Like, and I go, look, I didn't have a traffic stop. Yeah, man, welcome to the east side, dude. That's what happens. And we used to call it an east side stop. So... What you do when you get behind a car?
Making the stop.
Yeah, dude, they pull themselves over. Like, you'll get behind, like, you'll watch a crack house or something, and you'll get behind a car and you'll follow it for a little bit, and there's pulling someone's driveway, and you're like, okay. And I don't engage my equipment. I walk up to him like, hey man, do you live here? No. What are you doing here? My cousin lives here. What's his name? John. Like, okay, that's not going to work. I give a license? No. All right, get out of the car. So we used to call it east side stop. They pull themselves over every time, and you get guns.
And if they would have just kept driving, you would have been like, yes. You would have been like, all right, whatever.
The ones that you didn't want put on a driving school, we call putting on a driving school. They're just like locked up, elbows engaged, 10 and 2.
3 and 6 now.
3 and 6, yeah. I mean, they're just locked up like a race car driver. Like 25 miles. They're going 2 miles on the speed limit,
And you're like, you're doing
signaling every which way they want to go. But you'll follow them for miles. I mean, I'll follow them while I'm in the city. I don't care. Because I'm trying to I'm like, well, I just ran off a bad guy. Because the rule of thumb was anything after midnight, from midnight to like 4 in the morning, what are you doing over there? Like, are you going to work? Are you coming home from work? Or, I mean, if you're just trolling around. And what I mean by that is, so as we progress through a couple of years, one of the sergeants that I have a lot of respect for, he's still on to this day. I like to have him on the podcast, actually, to get his perspective, because he's got he was in a phenomenal car crash in a police car. And, and he's a really good storyteller, too. And he's a really good police officer. I have a lot of respect for him because he kind of took me under his wing, and I'm honored that I got to be a part of that. So anyway, he kind of took me and this other buddy of mine, we'll call the other guy Bull, and he was an academy friend. The guy that I went to the academy with, I really didn't know, but we knew each other kind of deal. We knew our names, but that was about it. And we later became pretty good friends because we worked for several years together on the street. And so he's like, hey, you guys you don't know what crack is? Oh no, I've never really seen drugs. The FTO program I saw a little bit, not a lot. He goes, well, let me show you something. So he goes, we're going to take you to a crack house. So we drive over to this area, and I could give you the exact address because I wrote it so many times. And I had a synopsis in my report based on this house because I made so many arrests there. And it was a guy named Tony that owned the house. And we get over to this house, and you would sit down the block, and you could just watch it. And the way I could describe it is like at McDonald's, he'd sit beside you and watch this. Just watch. Because the porch light's on. That means it's open for business. And it's the first of the month, too. So everybody's got their money.
Yeah.
You know what kind of money I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the kind of money that we support everybody else so they can go. They don't have to work kind of money. So I ended up sitting there, and I'm like, whatever it is, a waste of time. And I kid you not, it was like within 5 minutes, here comes a car. They park. They get out. 2 minutes later, they're in the car, they're gone. Here comes another car. And it would just go like that all night long for hours. And he goes, just pick a car. So we would always look for what's called felony tag light. So in the metro, you have to have a tag light to visibly see your tag.
Yeah.
So they would not have a tag light, and we'd pull them over. And it
for not having a tag light.
Yeah, and at that time, it was a felonious arrest if you had possession of certain substances that was off-white rock known as crack.
Yeah.
Let's say that's what it is. And so we would make several, at that time, man, I would just make several arrests, or I would talk to people. I had one lady that she had it in she was talking funny to us when we stop her, and I go, what's wrong with you? And she pulls out her dentures, and she goes, I have dentures. and she puts them back in, and then she pulls them out again, and you can see that crack rock in her dentures. And my partner takes his stick and hits her hand and drops the dentures on the ground. And then he's like, there's a crack, you know, and that little bitty rock put her in jail. And you're like, wow. God. I mean, that's what's sad is it was a little bitty amount. And every now and then you would come across like a dope dealer, like a gangbanger that would be basically what happens is how crack houses are formed is it's usually an elderly person that owns the house and a younger gang member would take over, just show up at the house.
Yeah.
Hey, he's like a great grandson. Yeah. This guy.
Somebody related.
Yeah. Can we use your house?
Yeah.
Sure. And you would go in there, dude, and there would be all kinds of people. You know, you just walk around and you're like, who are you people? And you're like, oh, yeah, they just all sitting there and just like waiting for their drugs. Or, you know, I just went on like that for years. I would make arrests doing that. And which led to other things in my career. But as I started as a rookie, like I said, I just would go out and make arrests like right and left and get as much exposure as I can, you know. I mean, there was no set rules on how I was supposed to do something. I didn't even know. I asked my dad, I go, hey, is there do I need a, you know,
when you're working?
Yeah.
Police officer for dummies.
Well, there's a policy procedure. I mean, I knew how to do the job. What it meant was like, you know, we call it activity. It's like how much, you know, how many arrests am I supposed to make? How much stuff am I supposed to do? You know, and you didn't know. I didn't know. No one really kind of gave me guidelines. My dad was like, well, you know, I always told my rookies the main activity, like get this many arrests. And, you know, and I'm always like, I want people out here to think that I went out here and just targeted people or harassing people. That's not it. I'm not like a small town officer. Okay. We were in a high crime area.
Fired.
Yeah. Zing. We were in, you know, I was in an area because I had a small town call probably one night.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh my God, like you guys have in your lineup alone, you have the amount of officers I have in my department. I'm like, yeah, dude. Like, yeah. He goes,
we have that much problem.
Yeah. He goes, your district is the size of my city. I'm like, I know, right? And that's what I have to take care of is my area. So, I mean, I worked so many shootings and so many drive-bys and just situations that I wasn't really, you know, familiar with. I mean, I didn't, and a lot of times other divisions that, you know, at the time there was 4 divisions. So there's Will Rogers, Hefner Division, Spring Lake, and there's Santa Fe. Mm-hmm. So they did not like coming over to Spring Lake because they didn't want to deal with the drama. They didn't want to deal with the shootings. They didn't like the crowds. They didn't like dealing with the problems. They were scared of it. And, you know, and one thing I learned how to do was work that kind of stuff. I learned how to do those kind of investigations, and that really enhanced my career down the road because I wasn't afraid of those kind of stuff. You know, I could handle it real quick, whereas, you know, we always tease like the northwestern side of the city, like, oh, y'all go clean people's pools and you get, you know, kitties out of trees and stuff. You know, it's like, it's BS problems.
Yeah.
And it really is. And whereas down there, it was like in the wintertime, you may not get a call. There were times, dude, where I didn't get any calls. We didn't get calls. So what I would do is at the time we had payphones still. Okay. This is aging me.
Yes.
And nobody had cell phones yet, right? That wasn't until a certain president came in and said, everybody needs a cell phone. That changed everything. Thanks a lot, so-and-so, unnamed. Rhymes with Bama. Anyway, so he basically changed things in that 2008, 2009. Uh-huh. So when I was there, we had payphones. So you could drive around, and what I would do, and at that time we didn't have GPS in our police cars. So what I would do is I'd drive up to like a payphone, and I'd like, you know, 911, and hang up the phone real quick and leave. So my buddies would have to get a call. They would have to go take that call over there. So I would do that. I would drive around and just hit certain ones. Now, I know this is one for one. The what do you call that? I can't get in trouble now for it because it's already the time.
Statute of limitations.
Statute of limitations. Yes. So that has since went on, but that's what I did. We would do that jokingly. We would mess around. I mean, Super Troopers had nothing on us, dude. Like, we messed around so much on calls. But anyway, that was kind of like my rookie experiences, and we can go into more detail in another episode. How about we take a break for right now?
I think we should take a break.
All right, that sounds good.
Thank Thank you for listening to this episode of the Salty Sarge Podcast. Check us out on Facebook or anywhere else you find your favorite podcast. We'll see you on the next one.